Hey everybody, it's Andy Steuer here from WriteForMe, and I've got Shruti Kapoor here from Wingman, and I want to talk a little bit about an amazing technology that I found recently. I always love interviewing CEOs and founders of companies who are building innovative products and services, and I wanted to introduce Shruti. So Shruti, pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, Andy. Great to be speaking with you. I'm really excited.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about Wingman. What does Wingman do, and what is the problem that Wingman solves in the market?
Sure. The way I think about it is a wingman for sales teams. And especially in today's world, a lot of times what people are struggling with is staying in sync without jumping on yet another Zoom call. And so that's exactly what Wingman does. It provides complete visibility on all different sales interactions that are happening. And it also provides coaching and real-time feedback to the salesperson.
And how does Wingman work? Just for anybody that's watching this, how does it basically work?
Sure. So, there are different pieces of information that we bring together, right? So the first piece of information is what are the interactions that are happening with customers? And a large part of it is all of the calls. So when there is a video conferencing meeting like this, Wingman is joining every single sales meeting. And the way it does that is it syncs with the sales rep's calendar. It knows all of the meetings that are scheduled on that person's calendar, and it then joins the meeting as an additional participant. All right, so it's almost like a personal assistant, or if you'd like, a co-pilot or a wingman for the salesperson on that meeting. If people are doing these meetings through, just simple phone calls that they might be making through dialers, it's again getting information on what's happening in those calls through the dialer APIs. And of course, a lot of the context for any sales organization exists in the CRM, so it also syncs with the CRM. All right, so what's happening is it's recording all of these conversations in real time, it's analyzing it, it's transcribing it, and based on what it's hearing on the calls, it's giving feedback to the salesperson on what they could be saying or how they could be saying it. All right, so that was a really long monologue, and at one point, Wingman warned me that I've been talking for too long, and that's exactly what it would do for salespeople.
That's really cool. Why don't we jump into a quick demo here, and you can show us how Wingman works on the back end and what the interface looks like. I see that Absolutely. It's joining us on the call here. I've recently become a Wingman customer myself. You've converted me successfully, and I love using Wingman in all my calls. And it's sitting right here in Zoom listening to this conversation, and it's transcribing it, right? As we go.
So, if that's a Zoom call or a Microsoft Teams call, it's just seamlessly joining each of those and quickly telling people, keeping them organized with notes and telling them also, hey, this is what you could be doing better. So let me share my screen, right? And since there are two parts to this, maybe let me show some of the cool stuff that looks. So there's a little widget on the top right of my screen, all right, which is just showing us that there is a meeting going on between the two of us.
Yep.
And what this is doing is it's listening to everything and recording it in real time, right? So the first thing is I don't want to take notes. Maybe there's something important on the meeting. I just click here. It creates a bookmark for that segment in the meeting, right? And then, like I said, it also gives me behavior coaching. So I'm sure somewhere down the line, you'll see a little pop-up which reminds me that I've been speaking for too long. But then the third thing it does is it gives me easy cues, right? So you mentioned, hey, will this, what will this do on a Zoom meeting, all right? Now, because we integrate with so many different things, I might not remember like what every integration looks like, but just because I said Zoom, this card popped up, right? And it could be really handy for a salesperson to know that, these are all of the important things that we do for this particular integration, right? So people could use this either for understanding, or, just getting information in real time, or even as, little reminders. Like I often say, does that make sense? And I know that's not a great question to end with. So I have a little reminder. So whenever I use that, it just, kind of reminds me, hey, stop saying that. So all of that it's doing in real time by listening to what both of us are saying. And the great thing is that once I turn off the demo mode and, the customers don't get to see a demo mode, you don't see any of the cue cards, right? So even if they're popping up on my screen, they are like my secret cheat sheet.
So a couple of things. So the bookmark feature is really interesting. I use that pretty frequently. And for me, the way I use it is we're in the middle of a conversation and we want to continue the natural flow of the conversation, but I want to make a little bookmark to remind myself when I go back to review the call that that's an important part of the call to go back to. So it just puts a flag in the call. And the cue cards, I love that you call them battle cards. They're it kind of gamifies a little bit what we're all doing every day, and they're great reminders to help, especially from a training perspective. When you're doing sales training and you've got new salespeople on board, these are like handrails a little bit or support on their calls so that their message is consistent with the company's message. So I find that really useful.
So, one of the things that people struggle with when it comes to onboarding new sales reps faster is it's not the product training, right? Like you can get people covered on the product training in a couple of days. But what's really hard is that there are so many different objections that can come up or different types of questions that can come up, right, in real customer conversations. And it's really hard for people to remember everything, in their 1 week or 2 weeks of onboarding.
Mm-hmm.
So this kind of allows people to set their own pace, right? So both in terms of saying, okay, there are quick reminders that I can set for myself or, a team can set for me. But also that, if there is a topic that I think I still struggle with, I can go and look at other reps calls, right? So today I decide that, let me see how do other reps handle a question around discount. I don't need to go and, speak to my manager or speak to someone else on the team. I can very easily just say, go to Wingman and look at all the calls that people have talked about pricing. So let me actually take you in. Maybe that's a good segue.
When you just said the word discount, my battle card popped up, by the way. Funny. Okay, so we're here in the Wingman app, and tell us a little bit about what we're looking at here.
Sure. So let me actually start maybe with the dashboard. All right. So the first thing that managers often like to do is just look at how the different reps are doing. So this provides them a quick glimpse, both in terms of their productivity. So are they making enough calls? Are some people having much shorter calls than others? Right. And then in terms of their engagement, right. So are they able to engage the other person? All right. So like I have a talk to listen ratio of 46%. Maybe that's reasonable. Maybe there are other people in my team who have it much higher, and so maybe I need to coach them on that. Right. And also, what is the longest monologue that I have had? This is of course just a call that I was recording with myself, but and then teams can go in and set up a variety of things that they might like to track. So you could look at how do I track whether people are adhering to my script. Are people asking qualification questions on every discovery call,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what is the impact of blockers showing up? How often is a competitor showing up in my call, right? So all those type of things, it's just really easy for managers to understand from here, right? And then what we do is, so as a manager, I might come here and I might decide that I'm curious to learn more about calls with blockers, right? Or I'm curious to just see all of my calls which have a pricing discussion, right? So I can come, so this is kind of a list of all of the calls across the team. Now, of course, what is really hard for anyone to do is that, there are 2,000 calls here, you don't know where to start.
Yep.
And so what people frequently resort to is just, randomly sampling a call, right? So they might say, okay, you know what, this one looks interesting. Maybe it's like 30 minutes. That's roughly how long a demo should be. So maybe this is just a call I want to review.
Yeah.
But that's, that's not really good if you're trying to do coaching on a particular theme, right? Instead, what I might want to do is to say, you know what, I want to look at all of my calls where, you know, I maybe discussed pricing and maybe set up next steps. Right, so I can go in here and I can give fairly advanced filters, and I could also further say that, you know, show me only calls out of this where the deal closed or didn't close, right? So it's also pulling in data from the CRM where I can say, you know what, show me only closed deals or lost deals or whichever way.
And what CRMs do you integrate with while we're on the topic?
Yeah, so we integrate with, of course, Salesforce. We also integrate with HubSpot, Pipedrive, and a few others.
That's great. So it pulls all that information together, and it does that through the transcription of the calls, and the AI detects certain keywords like pricing, for example, or other cues that help to create these filters. And you can create other filters on top of that, right?
Exactly. You can create your own filters on top of that. And then, so let's maybe look at one of the calls here. And of course, the other great thing is that I can go in and I can also search for calls based on, you know, a variety of things, right? So I could search for calls just based on a particular word that was set up, or even set up alerts for it, right? So maybe I want to know every time somebody on my team uses a curse word in a call. So let's maybe quickly look at a call. Sorry, one sec. And so the, you know, this is what reviewing a call looks like, right? Now, oftentimes teams face the challenge that when they're looking at a call, they don't want to spend 30 minutes looking at a 30-minute.
So we also
right. So how do we make that process much faster for teams, right? Because that's kind of where you know, that disconnect comes in, where a manager is like, yeah, you know, even if I have the call recording, I don't want to go back and listen to it. So can you just give me an update, right? So if you really want to ease that process, you have to make sure that this experience is really seamless for anyone who wants to come and get insights from the call. So, you know, a few different things that we do here. One is, of course, the transcript is available. People can quickly search for things within the transcript, right? So maybe I want to look for every time somebody talked about cue cards. So I could go in and type that here. I can also, I also color code all of the speakers. So I know when, you know, Neil was speaking versus when Shruti was speaking. So that makes it much easier for me to visually see, you know, what parts of the conversation I want to listen to. Now, the other good thing we talked about was the bookmarks. All right, so this is where they will show up. Right, so if during the call I clicked on this because I thought this was important and, you know, I wanted to refer back to this. Often the way people think about a call is, I'm interested in knowing, did my rep ask the right questions? And I'm interested in knowing what questions did the customer ask. So the AI actually detects all of the questions in the call, and you know who's speaking when. So it's super easy for you to know what you want to focus on.
That's great. And it's also really important to be able to build up this library so that when you're training other sales reps, you've got this library as a go-to so that they can quickly get up to speed.
Absolutely. You don't have to, you know, go searching for what content you should be creating.
Yep.
And, you know, coming to your thing on creating that library, if I saw that, you know, Neil asked a question and I thought that this was a, so one is I can just click here and start listening to the call. The second is, if I think that, you know, the response by the rep was really great, maybe what I want to do is I want to actually start creating the library right here. Right, so I can actually create, I can put in a comment And I can tag different people to the comments. I can say, you know what, I want all of my team to listen to this. Um, and I can tell them why I think that they should listen to this, right? Great response to pricing.
And I imagine that sends them an email at that point to let them know with a link to the video.
Yeah, so it sends them an email or a Slack notification. And what I can do is, because I might have future reps for whom also I want them to listen to this call, I can also create hashtags and say training moment.
Great.
Right, and then I can easily create a playlist of all of the calls that I want people to listen to.
Very cool.
And yeah, so the other thing, of course, important is for people to be able to do better follow-ups and to help people just look at tags that they might have created for themselves. So yeah, that's kind of a lot of what the product does. And what we've seen is during the COVID situation, people have just started using the product like 3 to 4 times of what they were using in February, because it's just so important to keep in sync with the team and also to quickly iterate the message, right? Like it's so much is changing around you. It's hard to get feedback from salespeople constantly to say, you know what, this is what happened on my calls today, or this is how this messaging went. But it's so much easier to do that here.
Yeah, and I would imagine with COVID and so many people working from home now that usage will go up because it's not necessarily only for salespeople. It could be for other calls, operational calls, for example, that you want to be able to train those people or save those moments so that as we live in this distributed work environment, this is a great way to be able to share knowledge with one another and have that education that normally you walk into somebody's office and you can just quickly get them up to speed with something. This is a great way to be able to do that virtually.
Exactly.
Are you seeing usage pick up from other parts of the organization? Maybe it starts with sales, but it goes to other parts of the organization.
Yeah, you're right. We've also seen a lot more non-sales user get added to the product, right? Especially product and marketing. Because they are the other people who really need to know what customers are saying. And this is, like the quickest way for them to know that without taking up more time from the salespeople.
That's great. So I'm gonna trigger a few hashtags here by asking you who are some of your competitors?
So maybe I should enable the demo so you can see the hashtags. If that was what you actually wanted.
Sure. Yeah. Let's go for it.
Yeah. So, of course, one of our competitors is a company called Chorus, right? And again, I mean, I think Chorus, Gong, Exec Vision, like there's a bunch of players in that space, right? I think the way people have thought about this has been to say, listen, CRMs only have 5% of all of the information from the conversations. How do we make sure that we have a lot more available to managers? But I think that what's been missing in that layer is to look at it from a sales rep's point of view, not just a sales manager's point of view, right? So I really like to think of this as a tool that's a wingman for the team, right? Not just for the sales manager. And which is why, things like allowing people to bookmark quickly means that it's actually helping not just the sales manager, but also the salesperson, right? So that's one of those.
And what happens with the integration with CRMs that you integrate with? Does the link to the call get added to the record, the person's record? So you would be in my database, for example. Would our call here get appended to your record in my CRM?
Yeah, that's an important question. So if you look at the call review page, there's also CRM information part here. And what happens is if I click on this, it automatically updates the activity field in the CRM, right? So whether that's HubSpot or Salesforce or whichever else, it goes in and tells, and yeah, the cue card.
There's our cue card right there.
So one of the things that it'll do is it'll go and populate the activity. So I don't have to rely on the sales reps to go and do that manual step of saying, yes, I had this call, and this is where more information can be found.
Yep.
I can also actually go in and take notes within Wingman that'll show up in the CRM. So this, for example, is the call in question. Right. So this is the call that we just saw in Wingman that's been populated in HubSpot automatically.
And the sales rep doesn't have to do anything. It just shows up in there because it recognizes their user ID. What is that? What's the unique identifier? Their email address and the meeting invite, or how does that connect?
Yeah. So the unique identifier is the email ID. So what it's doing is it's picking the email ID from the calendar.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's trying to see whether the same email ID exists in the CRM. And if it does, then it goes and updates it. If it's a phone call, the unique identifier could actually be the phone number.
Very cool. So helpful for salespeople who are oftentimes they're busy engaging in the call, and a lot of this stuff can be manual data input, and oftentimes that gets missed. So to have that automation is really helpful.
Yeah.
Tell me a little.
The other thing that we are bringing.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the other thing that we are bringing in is the ability to review the entire deal from within Wingman. So not just your phone calls, but also all of the email communication, and to able to share comments and feedback on that right from within Wingman, so that you're sharing comments on specific parts of that interaction. You don't have to go back and forth, pasting links, etc.
Yeah.
So I'll
very
maybe
useful.
pause share and try and show that to you later. But yeah.
That's great. And tell me a little bit about the history of the company. How did you get here?
So I actually spent a decade working in finance. Started out with Morgan Stanley as an investment banker, and that was just right around the time the financial crisis hit. So this crisis isn't new to me, even though a lot of people around me haven't been through a situation like this before. And then a couple of years back, maybe not a couple of years back anymore, but a few years back, I was working with a fintech company. The progression from finance to finance investing, and then into fintech. And I, was an early employee, bringing them to a new market. And as part of the go-to-market strategy, it very quickly became a game around figuring out sales, hiring salespeople. And that was kind of my first brush with sales. And what I quickly got interested and frustrated by was Salesforce. Right, I felt that while I wanted to rely on it for a variety of data, it didn't have that information. So that's been how I started on this, and that's been my journey. And I started this 2 years back with two other co-founders. They're both very talented engineers. They had spent more than a decade building some great tools. One of them was founding member of Uber's AI infrastructure team. And what we wanted to do was, we decided that we wanted to do something that was exciting and that would bring, of course, what we thought we could do better than others, right? So it could bring technology and it could bring the sales part of it together. And, the one thing that I realized was that sales is a really stressful profession. And I think that whatever you can do to make a salesperson's life better is probably worth doing.
I love that. I love how the history of where you came from and how you've arrived here. And tell me, let's talk a little bit about pricing. I think that people are a little curious, and I know I triggered a little cue card there, but tell me a little bit about your pricing model.
So we, charge per salesperson who's recording calls, right? So we kind of think of it as a tool that we want the entire organization to use, right? But only have to pay for the people who are, recording calls and getting the most direct benefit from it. And the prices start at $500 per rep for the year. Mm-hmm. And anybody else who's on the platform, like your product team, your marketing team, your managers, they all get a free license.
That's great. That's like it's an offer you can't refuse, really. If you're going to get behind your sales team and invest in your sales team, that's such a great way to do that. Shruti, is there anything else that you think that we should have anybody who's watching this hear more about you and the company?
I think if you feel that your sales team is, either feeling a little bit uncoordinated or a little bit low on morale, and you think that you'd want to help them, you should definitely go and recommend this to them, because we've just been getting so much love from people who've been using it, because it's really been a game changer for remote teams in this tough time.
That's fantastic. And you can find Wingman at trywingman.com. And I'm Andy Steuer from WriteForMe.io. And Shruti, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Andy.